The story of Exodus in the Bible is the remake and expansion of a story that first appeared in Genesis. When God first called Abram and Sarai, and they had to go to Egypt, and they had their life experience with Pharaoh, or later on, Moses and the people, the Jewish people, and his experience with Pharaoh, those are going to be the same story in different ways. This is going to show how the stories evolve and how the analogs can be used in a variety of different ways, where the story might sound different, but it's going to be the same once we analyze it. If we look at something like that, you can see parallels. Pharaoh is a part of both of them. But in one, he's a good guy, one, he's a bad guy. No, they're not the same. You kind of dismiss it. They are the same. In this video, I'm going to show how we see that and how we can see that this is just a monomyth structure repeating itself. My name is Dan Paulson. Welcome to the video. All right, let me set this up a little bit. First of all, you're going to have to kind of already know the Bible to some degree. I'll bring up some verses, but I'm not going to read through the whole thing because it's just going to take too long. We'll just talk through. And what I want to do is spend some time analyzing the story parts. Once we get into it, we're going to shift it from reading it literally to reading it as a living verse, as something that plays out in the template in the psyche. We're going to make that transition. And in doing so, we're going to reconcile some things. And I'll just talk about that in the video. I want to look at also really, if you're looking for the template and looking how to read the template and see the template, how component parts can be used similar. You can use the same component part, but in a different way. That Pharaoh in one story and the Pharaoh in the second story, that's a parallel. But in one story, he's a good guy, and in one story, he's a bad guy. They don't sound the same. They're telling it from different perspectives. So there's a way that they shift telling the story and the analogs that it really is kind of a revealing clue as to what's going on. This is almost like a kludge. It's like right there in your face. Okay, let's start with the first example, and it's a short example. This is where God has just... let me set it up better. Genesis happens, there's creation, then there's a flood, and then there's Babel. And then God finds Abram and calls him as the father of Judaism. So that is where we are in the story. And I'm going to start not right at the beginning of chapter 12, but let's see here. Let me get to the right spot. Sorry. Okay. So the Lord said to Abram, "Go from your country and your kindred and your father's house to the land that I will show you." So he's telling him to go to some place where he is going to have his own place. And as they go along, the Lord tells him, "I will bless those who bless you, and the one who curses you who will curse. And in you all the families of the earth shall be blessed. I'm going to make you a great blessing." All that kind of stuff is right there in the beginning. So they go on, they gather up his possessions, his wife Sarai, his brother. They go to the land of Canaan. They build an altar to the Lord. I'm skipping through this pretty quickly here. I'm getting to a specific point where I'm going to start reading. Now, Abram journeyed on by stages toward the Negeb. I'm going to tell you right here, if you're on a spiritual seeking search, Abram is you, journeyed on by stages. We're taking steps toward the Negeb. The Negeb is it's a fertile place where nothing is growing. The Negeb is a fertile place where nothing grows. We're looking for a void. Now, there was a famine in the land, so that's good. That's fastest to the world. I should quit doing that. I'll interpret later. So Abram went down to Egypt to reside there as an alien, for the famine was severe in the land. When he was about to enter Egypt, he said to his wife, "Sarai, I know well that you are a woman beautiful in appearance. And when the Egyptians see you, they will say, 'This is his wife.' Then they will kill me, but they will let you live. Say that you are my sister, so that it may go well with me because of you, and that my life may be spared on your account." When Abram entered Egypt, the Egyptians saw that the woman was very beautiful. When the officials of Pharaoh saw her, they praised her to Pharaoh, and the woman was taken into Pharaoh's house. And for her sake he dealt well with Abram, and he had sheep, oxen, male donkeys, male and female slaves, female donkeys and camels. But the Lord afflicted Pharaoh and his house with great plagues because of Sarai, Abram's wife. So Pharaoh called Abram and said, "What is this you have done to me? Why did you not tell me she was your wife? Why did you say she is my sister, so that I took her for my wife? Now then, here is your wife. Take her and be gone." And Pharaoh gave his men orders concerning him, and they set him on the way with his wife and all that he had. And all that he had. Okay, I'm going to stop right there. As far as reading it, let's just talk about that. This is where the analysis begins. Go look for videos on that. Oh boy, guy, it's a nightmare. There's not many people touching it, but they do try to describe it and explain it. He was in fear, all that kind of stuff. They're reading it literally. There's nobody out there that I can find that is trying to interpret this in that kind of way like that, in the mental way to do it. What I do now is I put myself into each position. I work through the story and pretend, okay, I'm God. I've done all of this stuff. I have the power to create the entire universe. I created the planet. It got bad. I wiped it out. I'm going to create something a little bit better. I'm going to put somebody in charge and give them better rules this time or something like that. And Abram, you're the one to do it. And that's it. I'm kind of gone from the picture then. Meanwhile, what's happening? Well, do I even know? I don't know. Let me be Abram for a minute. Abram is at a place where there is a famine. He's got nothing to consume. So what does he do? He goes to someplace else, to Egypt, because there apparently must be something there to consume. Before he even gets there, he realizes his beautiful wife is probably going to cost him his life. Now, I put myself in that position. I am living here at home, and I have a wife, and I think my wife is beautiful. And I've got somebody in town that lives on the far side that's a powerful person that I'm afraid of. I think this person is going to see my wife and that she is beautiful. So before anything even happens, I'm like, oh my gosh, I've never even met this person. He's never seen her, nothing like that. I'm already afraid. And I'm already telling my wife, tell him you're my sister because it's going to happen. Okay, so that's set up right there. You're like, what? Wait a minute. Nothing's even happening yet. He's scared ahead of time. Would you do that? What does that sound like? Then Pharaoh, oh, it's your sister? Okay, I'm going to marry her. You got animals, slaves, male and female, both, all of it for her anyway. He doesn't know any different. Pharaoh's a good guy. She's a beautiful woman. Yay, I got me a wife. And I'm giving her brother whatever anyway. Then plagues or things begin to happen bad there. So we see elements of the story emerging. There's some sort of a repeated problem happening there. And Pharaoh's like, oh, I didn't know that. You lied to me. Take your stuff and get out of here. What does that sound like? I'm Abram. I let somebody sleep with my wife to get goods for it. He gets mad at me and tells me to go, and I go, thank you, and walk. Do you do that? What does that sound like? Can you put yourself in those shoes? Now, I'm going to go one step further. I'm Sarai. I'm married to my husband. He wants me, because he's scared for his own life, to say that I am his sister and go marry this other person over here. Meanwhile, he gets stuff. What the hell is going on? Think it through. What's going on? Is that a real story? Did that really happen? Or is there something else in there? It's fun to watch people try to explain that. Kind of. It's sometimes sad too. Okay. We're going to leave that right there. Now we go to Exodus. I'm not going to bring this up to read because it's too big and it spreads way out. But we're in Egypt. We are Moses. We are somehow under the rule of Pharaoh. Pharaoh is a mean person in this case, though. Pharaoh has control over us. And plagues happen repeatedly at some point as we're trying to get away. We want to get away and we can't. Anyway, that story goes on. But what I'm suggesting right there is that Exodus story is... So somebody took that first story and said, oh, we got something there. Let's make that into a big one. Okay, simply put, I am Abram, my conscience that is now done, wanting to move on, and Sarai, the part of me that stores and holds everything that is in there, that is now affected by Pharaoh, the life experience. Pharaoh, in one case, wants me to go. Pharaoh, in another case, doesn't. But if you step back and look at it, Pharaoh represents the past, and leaving trying to escape, whether it's telling you to leave or yeah, you got to get out of here, or I've got to leave that behind. They're all representing this idea of leaving the past behind. Now, if you go through Genesis, if you really know the monomyth and what I'm working on and what I'm establishing, from creation all the way up to where I mentioned, where Abram is called, that is not part of what would be considered the monomyth. What it actually is like precursor. There's creation in there, then there's the human life cycle, things go bad, the flood has to start. That actually, I think, to me, it looks like that came from, that was a standalone at one point in time, that it did not continue on into Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus. Those came about later. They're of a different style. They are of a different tone. When you analyze them enough, you go, yeah, they don't sound right. They do not flow. They're not smooth, but they belong. How do we do this then? You look at it and say, how do I reconcile any of that stuff? Now, it plays out in the psyche on the human life cycle. Let's just jump right to it. Every component part of that story is a part of me. God, Sarai, Abram, Pharaoh, plagues, slaves, animals, all of those are a part of my psyche. What the hell? Yeah, how does that work? What they've done is taken a template, put it outward, and there's a lot of components on it. So let's take a look at something, and this is going to emerge when we see repeated cycles. When we look at other material, we're going to see this same sequence happen. It's the only place I can find that it fits on the human life cycle, and it's for self-healing, so it seems to be what is there. Okay. In the beginning, God, who is my higher being, and Abram is an individual. Anytime there is a calling happens, that person right there, Abram becomes who and what I am at the time of the calling. Abram is not me and my consciousness. Abram is me and my consciousness at the time that I have decided I am going to go on the pathway. Then I become Abram. There are other parts in there. Pharaoh is a part of my life experience. Sarai is my inner self. Sarai is my pure inner being, my Eve, my qualities and characteristics that I have trained, that I have programmed through my own perceptions and life experiences and put them away there. At first, I'm in where? I'm in a void. I'm in a desert place. This is like being naked, unashamed in the Garden of Eden, pure, devoid of things. This is going to be a parallel to right there. Oh, yeah. This empty place, moving on to stages. It wasn't in the beginning. We're trying to get back to it now. So we're going in stages, trying to get back to this empty place. However, what happens? Since there's nothing to eat there, there's no life experience. What we're doing here is, this is just the story part. Pharaoh and going to Egypt represents now like first sin. I am now having physical life experiences. That's what that represents. Pharaoh, I've given my inner self up to my life experiences and didn't take care of it. My inner being, my wife, my Sarai, I gave up to Pharaoh, which is life experiences, and I became polluted with slaves, things that I'm carrying that are now going to hurt me, animals, things that act out. All of those become parts of the story that I gained as a result of that. And the cyclical pain was happening that caused it to drive me away. Do you see that there? If we go to Exodus, what we're going to find is that Pharaoh is a bad guy. We're trying to escape Pharaoh. When we're looking at analogs, we realize that Pharaoh is not an individual and we can't have an emotional attachment to Pharaoh. Pharaoh represents a part of a physical experience that is now a mental process. Pharaoh was like I said, first sin, the temptation, the living the life. If we continue to go through Genesis, gay sex, man on man, what that is, conscious unconscious. We're not supposed to live life looking at the physical world and wiring to that. That's the final result. We have to understand that there's cause and effect. Something is driving it. When people are angry and acting out, we don't just jump into it and angry and act out with them. We step back and try to figure out what it is and ease what's driving them. That's a different process than just jumping into it. The sex, man-to-man sex is that's conscious to conscious. That is we, male or female, it doesn't matter. That is conscious. I am looking at the things happening in the conscious world, making decisions and putting that away. So all of those are on the template, parts of where we're living unaware of the fact that we are just living connected to what is going on around us. We need to let that go. We need to be devoid of that. The cycles of pain are there. We're trying to get away. We can't. If you look at that one, it gets really intense. It becomes a much bigger story, much more fun, actually, if you're telling this. It's a storytelling culture. And Exodus and Genesis are not in a book that they're reading. These are word of mouth. They're not written down. They're written down some places. Most you don't have access to them. Most people don't read or write. These are memorized, or they're being passed around word of mouth, and they're not probably coming together. They're going to be standalone stories. You're not going to hear them together. You will hear Jewish works together, but it'll take a while. Yeah, they're doing it a lot different than we were. Anyway, do you see how that works then? In the same way, Pharaoh's the bad guy in this case. That's life experience. Whether you call it good or bad, it doesn't matter. It's life experience. And you're trying to escape. I'm struggling to get away from that, and I can't. And I'm accumulating things that I take with me. And I finally get away, and I'm going to some place where I'm looking for a void again. That is the pattern that is going to be emerging. Do you see that in Genesis and Exodus? Exodus is a version of that part of, not all of Genesis, but the part of Genesis where it starts there with Abram being called and Sarai and the giving up, all of that right there, that part right there lines up with Exodus. Same story. One was a small one that didn't have much in it, and somebody looked at that and went, oh, that's a good idea. Let's turn it around. Let's blow it up big. Let's put instead of saying plagues were happening, now we're going to go draw out each one of the plagues. There's 10 of them. The story becomes very big. What else are you doing? You want the stories big, but it's still carrying the same ideas. Cyclical pain. Cyclical pain can be held in as simple a way. What was there in Genesis? There was a very simple way of carrying cyclical pain, that when you give birth, in childbirth, the woman will always feel pain. That's the inner being. What are we giving birth to? What emerges from our gardens? What comes from us? What is that we have hidden inside of us that we're hanging on to that continues to cycle out? Whenever we give birth to that, it's painful. It's cyclical pain there too. But you see, we have to work it out mentally. We have to go into this kind of a strange mental world and play that stuff out and see it up there. We have to be Moses. We have to be Sarai, Abram, God. Pharaoh. Pharaoh is not a person. Pharaoh is life experience that you are having, where you are not aware of the fact that you are attaching to the physical world and not stepping back and seeing that there's actually a cause and effect that you need to be aware of, and that jumping on board whatever is going on just makes you part of it. You're not separate from it. So ultimately then, Pharaoh in the Jewish material represents a concept. There was a Pharaoh, there was an Egypt. Yeah, it's easy to write that into the stories. But you can see that, it's kind of, there's something in there that is patterned in other material. It takes a long time to get around to it all. But the mental process reading it is the trickiest part. That's the part you have to do. The very first line of the Tao Te Ching from the Dhammapada is applicable here. The Tao that can be told is not the eternal Tao. There's a way to read these that you see it, and it's taken me a long time to you train your brain to translate all of those analogous terms, the metaphoric things, into something that fit in your life experience. And then, that's when you see things, how the emergence, the repetitive, there's a mental hierarchy in the mind, the higher self, the consciousness, the things that we store, the way that we live life experiences, all of those are in the story. Those elements are there. People are holding those places. And me is the conscious and the subconscious and the higher being. And then at various times in life. Often if you have to go conquer somebody, Jason and the Argonauts, I'm Jason, I'm called. I have to go get my kingdom back, my mind, from Pelias. Pelias represents my earlier self. That's me looking inward and saying, yeah, I'm done with that life. You got to quit. That's Jason taking over from Pelias, getting his land back right there. Those are going to be kind of some common elements in the story. You might have to get a kingdom, a land, a territory, vineyard. Something like that is going to be held in the story that are going to represent this space up here. It's going to maybe Maybe you have to destroy a structure, an evil building. That is wiping out your old self, destroying your old world, all of that. This is the world that has to be drowned out. All of the things in there is our earlier self when we go, oh my gosh, that was me being Pharaoh, attaching to life. It is now time to leave those struggles behind and move on, and it's difficult to do so. And I need to get through this barrier, turn inward, and get into a barren land. Do you see that happening in there? That is what, and we're trying to escape that. Moses is when we're called. Abram is when we're called, when it's time to leave that behind. Okay, the story's going more than that, but I don't know. Was that fun? I just wanted to do that. Yeah, it looks kind of spot on after a while. You're seeing similarities between them that actually a long time ago they did not look like similarities. You go through them and read them and you process them into your mind to the point that you go, okay, I see. Is a cyclical wheel the same as plagues? The same as rolling a rock up and having it roll down? Getting the liver eaten out? Having a tree grow up and you chop it down, but it doesn't produce anything good. You keep chopping it down, but it grows back constantly. They're all showing cycles of something that are somehow not okay. The birth happening. Buddha, the Dhammapada, all that we are is the result of what we have thought. If a man has had an evil thought, pain follows him like the wheel follows the foot of the ox that draws the carriage. That's us. We're the ox drawing the carriage. The wheel, the pain following the bad thought that we've had. All of those are showing cyclical pain. They're component parts of these myths. Plagues, cyclical pain. Repeated pain in childbirth, cyclical pain. Sometimes it's inferred like that. And, by that I mean, you could say that this is all verbal puzzles. Just think it through. You could tell somebody that you're going to get hit like that every time you do that. It's going to just keep happening if you do that. You could tell that to somebody. Or you could say, you're going to get hit if you do that. And it is just as complete. If you can argue that the Bible is true or not true, yeah, we know all that. The theist and the atheist all out there, they have no idea what's going on. We're taking Buddha's path, the middle path. There's something in here. We're going to enter the narrow gate. That means we play it out in the mind, and we do like what I was doing there. We are the story. Those component parts are us. The bigger they get, there's just more of us, sectioned up at different times, parts of us. I am Moses. How does Aaron come into play? Well, we got Moses and Aaron. They're both working together. Well, through life, you're always thinking to yourself, I got to change. I got to do something. I need to do this, but you never do. That's Moses. Moses knows what to do, but he doesn't do anything. Aaron comes along. Aaron gets the supernatural aid. Aaron is the one that actually has the capacity to do certain things. Moses is still the guide, but they have to work together. Aaron is that part of you that now says, okay, I'm not backing down. I'm done this time. It's finished. There, now you got Moses and Aaron working together. That's how it's all divvied up. Look for it that way. It's mental. It is all mental. You know what? This is very fluid. There's things changing, actually. I think that there is a variation that I want to discuss in something after making that video. I'm thinking of something going, there's a variation in the Pharaoh. The first Pharaoh, no doubt. That's your life experience. That's like first sin. The second Pharaoh that you're trying to escape from, the beginning of that story is that these two are brothers. This is you at first growing up together, being at self-conflict. You need to escape your earlier self. This would be actually not like life experience. This would be like actually the Pharaoh in the Exodus story holds more of a role like King Pelias in the Argonautica story, or your old family. Read Hinduism, the Bhagavad Gita, as you're going to go get your land back from your family. And yeah, all of these are going to be that same sort of a lineup right there. But in this case, I think Pharaoh is not experience. I think what Pharaoh represents is your earlier self that you're trying to escape from, where instead of going back and conquering yourself, you're getting away from your earlier self and going to a new space. Yeah, that variation is there. I'm seeing that now. All right. I'm getting too far into it. Love one another. See you in the next video.